Hey there, macro folks. This is Mr. Hooker, and today we're going to talk about price controls and quotas when the government meddles with markets. So let's get to this. So when the government starts messing with markets, there we end up with problems. I mean, very seldom, and I mean almost never, is this going to be a good thing. So rent controls, Um, they sound like a wonderful thing. You have rent control policies, um, pretty widespread in New York, Chicago, Atlanta, San Francisco. Um, it's a great idea. You don't want grandma to go homeless just because they keep raising the rent. So it has a pretty solid backing um, in the way that that works. But the way that it's done, it makes it such that um, one study I've seen says that there hasn't been um, a new building constructed in a rent control zone in New York, a new apartment built in a rent control zone in New York, since like the 30s or something. It's kind of crazy. Um, they'll remodel them or something, and then there's the crazy thing about now New York has um, a thing about anything over 100 apartments has to have certain other requirements. So what do you get? Every new building has 99 apartments. It's really weird. You make rules, and businessmen act like teenagers. Okay, that's the rule. That's fine. We'll walk right up to the rule, but not across it. Um, it's insane how that works. Um, so because of these policies, affordable, available rental apartments, they're hard to find. It's just kind of nuts. So why does the government mess with the prices? Because market prices don't necessarily please the buyers or the sellers, so they can lobby the government to help them by altering the price. And price controls are just legal restrictions on how high or low the market price may go. So this happened in the 70s with gas. They put a price ceiling on gas, and you could probably ask your parents, grandparents about how that worked out. There were lines for gas. I mean, they had to ration gas. You either could buy gas on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, um, and you had to have a ticket to buy it. So A, you had to be on your day, and B, you had to have your ticket with you, and it was crazy. So, and this was meant to help you. This is how crazy that was. Um, so it's kind of nuts how that all works out. So there's two versions. There's the price ceiling and the price floor. So the rules of the room apply. You can't go above a ceiling. You can't go below the floor. So price ceiling is the maximum price the sellers are allowed to charge for a good or service. But here's where economics is economics, and it's kind of crazy. For a ceiling to be effective, you can't put it above equilibrium. You have to put it below equilibrium. So it has to go below equilibrium so that when it's the maximum and when the price hits it, when people, when buyers hit it, then they can't get to equilibrium. So equilibrium can't be touched because if you put it above equilibrium, then we just end up at equilibrium. Remember, there's always pressure to equilibrium. When you put the ceiling above equilibrium, we just fall to equilibrium. It's useless. So you have to put a ceiling below equilibrium. And then the floor is the minimum price buyers are required to pay for a good or service. And that has to be set above equilibrium if you want it to be useful. Think minimum wage. All right. So a good, price ceiling example is that um, rent ceiling that we just talked about in the last slide. But the price floor would be minimum wage, or the price supports for agriculture if I have any people that work farms or anything like that. So a price ceiling. What are we talking about here? Apartments. Okay. So we've got some rents from 600 to 1400. Your equilibrium rent here is 1,000 with 2 million apartments sold. So there you go. Um, but we apparently don't like that so much. Um, create, if uh, so that's the way that goes. Now this price ceiling here, there we go. We're gonna create a price ceiling of 800. I just didn't hit the button enough. All right, so at a price ceiling of 800, we're gonna have 2.2 million apartments demanded, 1.8 million apartments supplied. So what we're going to have is a shortage of 400,000 apartments. That's a small problem, right? So we're not going to hit equilibrium. So we're just going to butt up against equilibrium. We're not going to get to it. That's going to be our issue. Um, so there are some side effects of that price ceiling. We're going to have this low quantity um, of goods offered, inefficient allocation to customers. It's not always going to be the right customers getting the goods. Um, in a normal market, it is always the customers who most highly value the good that gets the good. We're also going to have wasted resources. There's also going to be inefficiently low quality. You've all heard the stories of slumlords, etc. And then black market. So you'll have people on the side that go, "Hey man, I know the rent's 800. I'm willing to pay you 950 for an apartment." So nobody's going to be there willing to pay like 1100 because market rent's 1,000. So people be willing to pay up to 1,000, and who's going to pocket that? The landlords or the building owners. So somebody in between, so those people will be getting it. So, oops, to get to. So the dead weight loss there is that area between the 1.8 and the 2. That is your dead weight loss. So little trick on the dead weight loss. The dead weight loss is always going to be a triangle. It's always going to point toward where you should be, um, and where it would be efficient. So that is how that goes. All right. Inefficient allocation to the customers. So price controls lead to the misallocation of apartments. People who badly need a place to live may not find one, but some apartments may be occupied by people with much less urgent needs. And that happens in New York all the time. If you read the news, you see some really crazy stories of like celebrities who have rent control apartments overlooking Central Park. So some of the rent control zone overlooks Central Park, and you have celebrities that have rented a rent control apartment overlooking Central Park. But this is somewhat illegal in the sense that they don't use it as their primary residence. They're just there when they're in New York. And so the tenants typically try to kick them out, and these fools will try to fight um, eviction. They always lose, and some of them, just gracefully disappear and don't make a fuss about it because they don't want to be in the news. But some of them fight eviction, and that always goes up bad. It always goes badly, and it gets ugly. It's funny to me how that works, but it's like, hey, you broke the law, you got busted, just go away. So you weren't supposed to be there in the first place. Just leave. So under rent control, people usually get apartments through luck or personal connections, and so that the ones with the celebrities, they got it because they were famous. People get starstruck. Hey, you got an apartment, yay! Um, so there's also the wasted resources. People expend money, effort, and time to cope with shortages caused by the price ceiling. So back in 79, U.S. price controls on gas, which I was talking about earlier, led to shortages that forced millions of Americans to have to wait in line at gas stations for hours each week. So that's hours that you could not go to work, you could not spend with your family, you were just having to wait for gas. The opportunity cost of the time spent in lines, the wages not earned, the leisure time not enjoyed constituted wasted resources. So that was just insane. Um, and I'm filming this, week before Christmas 2025. And they had President Trump had his little thing about affordability, his little presidential speech about affordability last week. He didn't mention it, but there are rumblings in the economic community that he is thinking about price controls as a way to handle affordability. It would be a disaster. It would be like the 70s again. So have fun with that. It's not going to be fun for any of us. Let's just point this out. All right. So rent control just creates missed opportunities. Um, at the controlled price, sellers have more customers than goods. In a free market, this would be an opportunity to profit by raising prices. But when prices are controlled, sellers cannot raise prices. So think about it this way. During disasters, right? Hurricane. I grew up on the coast, East Coast, down near Charleston, where hurricanes are prevalent. Um, you cannot. There's gouging laws. You can't raise the price of stuff. Um, but if you could raise the price of stuff, people wouldn't buy out. People wouldn't just buy out the stores. Um, all the bread and milk wouldn't be gone. That's weirdly what everybody buys. Um, but people wouldn't buy out the supplies if you could raise the price. People would think about it and be like, okay, so what do I actually need? So that is one of the things that happens, like in a free market where prices could go up in times like this. Yes, you're going to have to pay more, but you will also leave some for others. So that's the other side of that. So what do? They reduce the quality of the good. They also reduce their service. Um, Landlords in rent-controlled housing have no incentive to provide better conditions. They're just like, yeah, that's your problem, not mine. There's also shadow markets that emerge. That's a market where goods or services are bought and sold illegally, either because they're prohibited or because the equilibrium price is illegal. Some tenants are willing to bribe the landlords. And shadow markets encourage disrespect for the law in general and worsen the position of those who are honest. Um, it's like the old football coach used to say, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Um, so shadow markets can diminish some of the inefficiencies, but in the end, society as a whole is made worse off. All right, so this is what the economy looked like before. On the left is what it looked like before rent control. So consumer surplus and producer surplus were split equally. Okay. And then we imposed an $800 price control. So we had dead weight loss. There's your consumer surplus. There's your producer surplus. So consumer surplus increased, producer surplus decreased, and we had dead weight loss. Um, so things happened. Um, Consumers got a little bit more, but they also lost some surplus. Um, they could have, it's all kind of crazy. Um, so, and I say it increased, it may not have, because they lost that whole yellow triangle. Um, they gained that little piece, but then they lost that big yellow triangle. So, um, but producer surplus went down, so they're still not going to get some stuff. All right. So why are there price ceilings? Because they do benefit some people who are better organized and more vocal than those who are harmed. And if the price ceiling has been in effect for a long time, buyers may not have a realistic idea what would happen without it. And government officials often don't understand supply and demand well enough to know anything about it. Most of them aren't economists. They're political scientists or lawyers. They have no clue. In Venezuela's food shortages from the past show how price controls disproportionately hold the people they were designed to benefit. So we're going to stop right here. We'll pick it up here. We'll do price floors in video number 2. See you there.